modifying symbols and symbol instances in Illustrator. First of all, I'm going to make sure that my Symbols panel is open under Window and find Symbols. Here it is. So I need to define this as a symbol, and then I may want to modify it. I may want to do things like transformations or make copies. I can add drop shadows, all kinds of fun things. So just to remind you, there are several ways that I can define this as being a symbol. The new symbol icon in my Symbols panel. In my options menu, I have new symbol, or I could drag it in and I get my new symbol options box that allows me to make some specific settings. I also can press my F8 button. So I'll name this flower and click OK, making sure that the type is movie clip. That's very important. You want to keep that as movie clip. So now this is an instance. This is where my symbol lives. Remember, the Symbols panel is sort of a database. So now that this is an instance, I can do whatever I want to it. You notice I have a bounding box, and I can actually drag and do a transformation right now. I can do a scale. I'm going to hold my Shift key down so I constrain the proportions. I could rotate it. You can see how I can do the rotations. I can use any of those transform options that I have up here under Object menu and Transform. I can move, rotate, reflect, scale, shear. I can do a transform each, and I can do transform again if I've done something repetitive. I can also copy this. I can use my Alt key with my selection tool. Remember, I get that double arrow and drag out a copy. So now I have two instances. I can just keep dragging from my symbols box as well. Okay, so now I can have multiples out here and do all kinds of fun things to it. Now, what if I wanted to put a little drop shadow on one of these? I can also change my transparency, which means the opacity. So let's start with the opacity. If you remember which icon it is over here, it may be open in your panel dock. If you don't see the transparency panel icon, go to your Window menu and again transparency. These icons eventually will become more familiar to you, but starting out, they're going to look still a little foreign. So with this selected, I can change my opacity, and I can, decrease this if I want. So what I'm doing is I'm changing the attributes of this symbol instance. I am not changing my original symbol. Okay? If I wanted to put an effect on this one, I could go under my Effect menu. I could do something to this if I wanted to. A lot of different options here. We're just going to stick with a drop shadow. Again, I'm going to turn preview on so I can see what's happening. There's my drop shadow. I'll go with what the defaults here are. And so there it is. And if I click this, remember my appearance panel. Again, you can go under your window and find appearance if you don't see it up. The appearance panel tells me what I've got going on right now. When I click this, you can see this has a drop shadow. Okay? And you can see that these others, this one has an opacity at 42%. This one is just a standard default. So each of these are really the same symbol. It's just that now I have chosen to add some effects, some opacity, some transformations to them. Now what if I want to update my symbol here? Here's my word of advice. I would always recommend that you keep the original symbol in the Symbols panel, and if you do updates, make it be a new symbol. Now if I were to redefine this, I can go ahead and hold on my Alt key and drag it over top. Do you see how this highlights? There's a darkened box around this symbol in the panel. I get a little plus icon. What I'm going to do if I let up on my mouse right now is I'm going to update my original symbol. I'll go ahead and do that. Okay. It didn't like that. Let's try this again. It does not like that it's an instance of this symbol to be redefined. So here is what I need to do. I need to break this link because it's not liking that I'm taking an instance of itself and telling it to be a new self, so to speak. So let's go ahead and break the link. Breaking the link symbol icon here in the bottom of my symbols panel will disconnect the relationship between this, because this really is an instance of this symbol but with an added effect. So let's go ahead and break it. Okay, and when I do that, you'll notice that now I can select everything individually. Let's go ahead and select it all, and just as I would do, if I drag it in, I would define and make a new one, but if I hold the Alt key down and drag on top of the symbol in the symbol panel, it's going to update it. And look what happens to these other two instances. I now have a drop shadow on those. So it's a way that you can, you make your mind, you change your mind, you want to update, but like I said, it would be better off to define it as being new. So I'm going to do that effect, and instead just drag this into my symbols panel. I'll call this flower number 2. And so now I have 2 of them here. The original instances are connected to that first flower symbol, and this one is a new flower symbol, so I can drag more of these out if I would like. Okay, so if I do want to go ahead and break this link and make this be its own thing, I can. That's that break link icon when I have one of these selected. You can do that with any of the symbols in there. If I wanted to, I also have an option here where I can select all the instances, and that allows me to select everything that's the instance of the symbol that I have active right now. So a couple of ways that we can edit symbols: we can redefine symbols, we can create new symbols based on transformations or appearance changes. So a lot of options with symbols.